Hello and welcome back to the next video in this instructional video series where I cover how to apply for an IWE or IYE business loan through Community Futures Beaver River. You can see here I'm just back on the main page for Community Futures Beaver River, which is cfsask.ca/beaver-river. And again, to navigate here, just go to loans and then choose which one you are applying for. Is that IWE for women or IYE for youth? I'll just click on the IWE program for this example. And now I've already covered this in the initial video. Just make sure that you've read through this thoroughly and that you make sure that you are eligible and the program is eligible. And then you can just scroll down to the bottom here. I've already covered how to apply and fill out that initial online digital application. And then in the previous video, I covered how to apply using the full application form, that 6-page PDF form. And now in this video, I'm going to continue explaining, but I'm going to move on to the business planning guide. So you can just click on this guide here and it will open up an 11-page PDF for you. Again, make sure you've clicked on the right one, if that's the women's program or the youth program. These forms are basically the same, but at the top, they're a little bit different. So you want to make sure you get the right one, just so you're indicating which program you're actually applying for. So once you're on this PDF, you can just scroll down here. This is just like the introductory title page. Can scroll down to page 2 and make sure you read the introduction section thoroughly, and then you can move down to the executive summary. So it says, although this is the first page of the business plan, it is the last page to be completed. It should be short and describes your business or business idea and the highlights of the business plan, including a short summary of the financial projections and a summary of how it is to be financed. So as it mentions there, the executive summary, that comes at the beginning of a business plan, but it's typically written last. That's because once you've gone through the full business plan, the full application, you have a much better understanding of what you're applying for and what it is you want to communicate. So that makes it easier to create this short executive summary. And you can just keep this brief. You can see this section is not very long. You know, if you're making it 7 pages long, it's not really a summary anymore. So keep it within this section. That should be adequate in this case. And just to review what it says here, it should describe your business or business idea. So what is your business? What are you providing? Is it a product-based business? Is it a service-based business? Where is it located? Is it a startup? Who owns it? What's the target market? Things like that. You can just briefly highlight the important concepts behind the business. It also includes a short summary of the financial projections and a summary of how it is to be financed. So you can touch on those points as well, how you're actually going to be financing the business or funding it. And then a summary of the financial projections. So, what are you anticipating the startup cost to be, and, revenue in the first year and expenses in the first year and things like that. So you can just keep that very brief while still covering all those important points that are mentioned there. And now, again, this is at the start of this PDF, but you can come back to this at the end and fill in the information there. So scrolling down here now, just going on to the next page, page 3. So you can just fill this information out here. Business name, so what is the registered name of the business, and what is the business legal name? So a business name is one that you actually register with the business registry, and the legal name of the business depends on the legal structure. If you are operating a business as a sole proprietorship, then the legal name of the business is your personal legal name because you are the legal entity behind the business. Whereas if you're operating as a partnership, you might have 3, maybe 4, maybe 2 people. And so you can just put the legal names of the individuals. Whereas if you're operating as a corporation is a separate legal entity from the owners. And so you would put the legal name of the corporation, whether that's a numbered name or a word name. And now for business name, it's okay if you don't have one, especially as a sole proprietorship. Maybe you're just conducting business under your personal legal name, and then you can just put that there. But if you are planning to conduct business under a separate business name, then write that one down here in this section. Now the next portion talks about type of business ownership. So what is the legal structure? Is it a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation? Just click on the legal structure in which you're operating your business under. And then to the right here, just a breakdown of the ownership percentages by owner. So if it's just you conducting business as a sole proprietor, you just put your name in 100%. If it's a partnership with 2 people, put each partner's name and then 50-50 or maybe 80-20 or 75-25. Or whatever the ownership split is. If it's a corporation, could just be you as a 100% shareholder. Maybe there's 3 owners and write them all down here, and maybe they all own 33 1/3% of the shares. Now after that, the next thing is the business address. So what is the address of the business? That could just be your home, at least for now, or maybe you have an office space or retail space and you want to put the address of that. Phone number and fax number. You might not have a fax number, just leave that blank or put NA, but make sure you put in a business phone number, which could just be your personal phone number. The next thing is business email address. If you don't have a separate email address for your business, that's okay. You can just put your business or your personal email address for now for the business. And then if you have a website, put the domain name in there. And then contact person, which will typically be you, the applicant, so just put your name there. The next section is background. So where did your business idea come from? Why do you think your business will succeed? And provide an overview of the industry in which your business will compete. So let's just break this down here. This can be brief, as you see it's a small section here. Where did your business idea come from? So what was the inspiration? What was the motivation? Was that you were working for someone else for a long time and just felt like you wanted to break off and do your own thing and start your own business? Was that you found a need in the market? You know, your community was underserved with a certain type of product or service and that inspired you to start the business? Or did you see kind of like a new trend in the market, you know, some type of new product or service that was trending and that excited you and you wanted to start your own business around that? There are a lot of different reasons why people start businesses. So just briefly indicate where that motivation and where the idea came from. Now the next line there says, why do you think your business will succeed? So why will it succeed? There's no guarantee, but maybe what motivates you and what gives you confidence that it will succeed is that you have a lot of experience in the industry, or you're highly motivated, or you have, you know, really competent business partners, and maybe you have a lot of skills and training. Maybe you have good mentors. Maybe you know that there's really strong demand for your product or service. So just briefly list the reasons why you believe your business will succeed. And then lastly, provide an overview of the industry in which your business will compete. So what industry are you in? Is this the food service industry, like restaurants and catering? Is this personal services, health services, professional services? You know, is this trades? Just briefly overview the industry in which your business will compete. From there, you can scroll down to page 4. And the next section is management. So it says, provide a description of the proposed management team, including names, titles, duties, experience, and qualifications of each. Who will keep financial records for the business? So again, let's just break this down step by step. So what are the names of the management team? And now if this is just a sole proprietorship and it's just you're doing all the work, then you are the owner, operator, and manager. So you can just put your name. Whereas maybe it's a partnership and there's 2 of you, you can put both names, or maybe there's 4 of you. Or maybe you're not the manager, you're the owner and you're gonna hire a manager. In that case, put the name of the manager. And then what is their title? You know, they might just be the owner operator. They could be the sales manager. They could be just a general manager. So put down their official business title if they have one. And then next is duties. So what are your duties as the manager, or the duties of the manager that you are hiring or have already hired? So are they kind of in control of everything? Are they in control of, you know, sales? Are they responsible for marketing? Are they responsible for cleaning? Are they responsible for ordering supplies? Are they, you know, dealing mostly with clients? Are they doing the bookkeeping and things like that? So just list some of the main duties that they have. And then next is experience and qualifications. So for each manager, what is their experience? Do they have relevant work experience in that field, or relevant business ownership experience or management experience that helps in this particular role? And then qualifications as well. Do they have some institutional education when it comes to business management, or institutional education, training, certificates in this particular field in which the business operates? So make sure you list all the relevant qualifications that they have, whether that's work experience, education, training, certifications, things like that. And now lastly in this section, who will keep financial records for the business? So will that be you, the owner? Will that be a bookkeeper? Will that be an accountant? Will that be, you know, multiple people? Who's keeping the financial records for the business? Just briefly explain that. And then you can continue down here. It's a pretty big section here, just in case you have, you know, multiple people that you need to put. Scrolling down to page 5 now. So this is market analysis. So it says, provide a detailed description of the products and services you will offer, in what geographic area, and who your customers are for each product and service you are offering. Why do you think that there is a market demand for these products? So let's just break this down again step by step. So provide a detailed description of the products and services you will offer. So what are you providing? Are you a massage therapist and you provide, massage therapy services? Are you a photographer and you do mostly wedding photography or, professional photography for, businesses like headshots and things like that, or event photography? What is it that you're providing? Or if that's in the case of products, maybe you do catering, or maybe you do 3D printing, or maybe you do some type of beadwork, or you're making clothing or something like that. So just make sure you clearly describe what it is that you're selling, what you're providing, products or services, and that'll just be dependent on the industry that you're in. The next section is in what geographic area. So are you serving just your town, just your city, surrounding area, the whole province of Saskatchewan, all of Western Canada, all of Canada, the whole world? So just identify the geographic area in which you are actually providing those products or services. For example, if you're a massage therapist, chances are you're only serving your local community. You're probably not going to be traveling too far to provide that service. Whereas if you have a business where you're a website designer, maybe you want to, provide that service of website design, website building for, clients all around the world or in all of Canada. So just make sure that you indicate that and write that down in this section. Next is who your customers are for each product and service you're offering. So if you are providing photography, maybe you do wedding photography. So of course your target market would be for, couples that are getting married. Or if you do more like professional corporate business photography, maybe you want to, cater to certain types of businesses or nonprofit organizations or, event centers or something like that. Or if you're in trades or in construction, are you providing construction for residential properties? Maybe you're building fences and decks and sheds and stuff like that. Or maybe you're doing more like commercial construction where you're working for businesses, or you're doing framing or something like that for home builders. So just indicate who your customers are for each product and service. And this could vary significantly within a business. You could have multiple different products and services that are kind of, appealing to different customer bases. So just make sure you indicate that. And then lastly, why do you think there's a market demand for these products? So maybe you've already been in business for a while and you just know from experience that there is demand for it and you're making a lot of sales. Whereas if this is just a startup and you're not sure, why do you think there is market demand for these products? Maybe you're starting the business because you see a lack of this product or service in your community. Maybe you just know from speaking with other people that there's a lack of these products and services provided. Maybe you can see that it's a growing industry. Maybe you've kind of been doing this as a hobby and people are just asking you for more of the service you provide or more of the product you provide. So just indicate why do you think there is market demand for these products. And then you can continue to scroll down here. So now on to page 6 here. So this section mentions competition. So it says, identify the major competition in your market area and your competitive strengths. So this depends on the industry and what you're providing. But if you are like a massage therapist, the example I mentioned before, then the competitors in your market would be those other massage therapists working in your town, in your city, on your reserve, in your rural municipality, or wherever that may be. So you can identify those as a competition and just mention what your strengths are. So maybe you provide some type of specialty product or service. Maybe you have just more experience in the field. Maybe your pricing is better than theirs. Maybe there's some extra value added that you have. So this really depends on the industry. So a massage therapist, for example, would be very much local. Whereas if you're doing web designing, maybe you're competing with web designers all around the world. So it might be a little bit harder to identify specific competitors. If you have something like a cafe or a construction business, maybe there's some obvious businesses that stand out as competition in your region. Just make sure you identify them and then just point out some of your strengths that make it obvious that you're offering something of unique value to the market. Next, you can continue scrolling down here to pricing. So outline what your pricing structure will be and how is it arrived at. So how are you going to price your product or service? Are you basing your prices just on comparables, like what the competitors are offering? Are you basing your prices based on what your input costs are going to be? Are you basing your prices based on what you think people are willing to pay, or some type of combination of those? And then indicate how that was arrived at. So how did you figure that out? Did you just say that, hey, I'm going to be a massage therapist and everyone else seems to be charging, $80 to $100 per hour, therefore I'm going to stay in line with that? Or are you saying, hey, I have a construction company and it's going to depend on the job, but I'm going to base my pricing based on my input costs, like my materials and labor. Or maybe is it kind of a new product and there's not much for comparables, there's not so much for input costs, and so you've kind of just priced it based on what you think people are willing to pay for it. So whatever that may be, just indicate that in this section. And then after that, you can scroll down here to the next page, page 7, where it talks about marketing strategy. So it says, how do you propose to market your products and services to your proposed customers? Using what mediums? What will your marketing budget be? So we'll break this down step by step again. How do you propose to market your products and services to your proposed customers? And using what mediums? So how are you going to advertise? How are you going to market it? How are you going to get in front of people? How are you going to find prospective clients? Is that going to be a heavy focus on word of mouth and networking events? Is there going to be a heavy focus on digital advertising, like on social media and maybe, some paid ads on social media or Google? Is that going to be, more kind of traditional print stuff, like handing out business cards and flyers and things like that? Is that going to be like television, radio? There's a lot of different options for advertising your business. Which ones are you planning on using? And lastly, what will your marketing budget be? So are you planning on spending, just $50 per week and doing mostly organic posts on social media with a little bit of paid posting, or are you going to be, hiring a voice actor and paying to have radio ads, and that's going to be a bit more expensive? So depends on what your strategy is, but just explain what your marketing budget is going to be based on your proposed strategies and mediums. And then after that, scrolling down here to the next section, which is the operations plan. It says, describe your proposed operations, location, hours of operation, suppliers, equipment, inventory, parking, number of employees, production processes, and bookkeeping, etc. So again, we'll just break that down step by step. You can see this is not a really long section, so you can keep it quite brief. So the first thing there is describe your proposed location. So is this a home-based business? Maybe you're doing bookkeeping or web design from home. Do you have a cafe where you have a commercial space? Is this a construction company where you're working on site? Just briefly indicate that. Hours of operation, is that the cafe where you're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or are you doing massage therapy where it's kind of just part-time, evenings and weekends, or a construction company where it's, Monday to Friday, longer days kind of thing? Just briefly outline your hours of operation. And then the next point there is suppliers. So who are your suppliers? If you're a web designer, you might not really have any suppliers. Whereas if your business is going to be a cafe, you're going to need suppliers for many things, like the food products, for cutlery, especially if you have kind of disposable paper cutlery, things like that. If it's a construction company, you'll need suppliers for lumber, materials, protective equipment, tools, things like that. And then the next one would be equipment. So again, that can vary a lot from business to business. If you're starting a cafe, you're going to need kitchen equipment. So where are you purchasing that? If you're a construction company, you're going to need, maybe a work truck and some tools and equipment for doing construction. Where are you going to purchase that? Whereas if you're a web designer, you might not need any equipment other than your computer. Maybe you already have that. So very much depends on the industry, but just briefly outline who your suppliers are going to be and the equipment that you'll have and need. And then next is inventory. So not all businesses have inventory. For that example of like a massage therapist or a web designer, there's not really going to be much for inventory. Whereas if you have a cafe or like a clothing store, just briefly describe what type of inventory you're planning on carrying. Next thing is parking. So do you have a home-based business doing web design and you don't really need any parking? You can indicate that. If you have a home-based massage therapy business, do you have parking out front? If you have a cafe, you're probably renting a commercial space and maybe there's plenty of parking in front of the building. If it's a construction company, maybe you don't really need parking. No one's really coming to your office, so make sure you indicate that. And then next is number of employees. So is it just you for now? Do you have 2 employees already? Are you planning on having 5 right away? So just indicate how many you have. And then production processes. So how are you producing things? In the case of a massage therapist, you're not really producing any type of product. Whereas with a website designer, you are producing a product. It's more of a digital product. So maybe just using a certain web building platform. If you're opening a cafe and bakery, maybe you are, having staff that are preparing the baked goods and the foods and things like that in store. So just briefly indicate how that's going to work. And then lastly would be bookkeeping. So who's going to be doing the bookkeeping? How does that work? Are you just doing it yourself using a spreadsheet? Are you hiring a professional bookkeeper using QuickBooks or some other type of software? Again, you can just keep it brief, but make sure you indicate how that will be working for your operations plan. From there, you can scroll down here to page 8. And page 8 is talking about licenses and permits. So the first one there says, business license. Do you have your current license from the local government? Typically, a business license is issued on a municipal level. So that would be with your town, your city, your rural municipality, or if you're on reserve, maybe a band council resolution is what they have. A lot of rural municipalities don't actually have business licenses, whereas typically towns and cities do. So do you have it? Indicate yes or no. Next is name search and registration. So unless your business is a sole proprietorship operating under your own personal legal name, you must register the business name here in Saskatchewan. Have you completed a name search and registered your business name? Have you done this yet? This is a 2-step process to apply for the name and then register the approved name. If you have done that, indicate yes. If not, put no. If you're kind of halfway through and you've applied for the name but haven't given approval yet, just indicate that. Next is GST, so goods and services tax. If you expect revenues of $30,000 or more, it is required, that being $30,000 of taxable revenue over the course of 4 consecutive calendar quarters. So basically a 12-month period. If you're anticipating that much revenue, then you will have to register for GST, especially once you hit that mark. Otherwise, it is voluntary. So have you applied for a GST number? Indicate yes or no, or you're planning to soon. Just give some brief details there. Next is Revenue Canada, so the CRA. If you have employees, you will require an employer registration number. Have you applied for the employer registration number? So this would be similar to GST, except for it's payroll, also through the CRA. So if you've applied, just indicate that here. Next is WCB. WCB stands for Workers' Compensation Board, so that's Workers' Compensation Insurance. It says if you have employees working for you, you are required to apply for a Workers' Compensation Board assessment number or account. Have you applied for the WCB assessment number? So just indicate if you have or have not applied for workers' comp. Next is zoning. So what zoning regulations apply to your business? So zoning is basically bylaws imposed by different, rural municipalities, towns, cities, whatever, and they have rules around what type of businesses can operate out of certain locations within that region. So what zoning regulations apply to your business? So for example, if you have a home-based business, there might be zoning bylaws around having visitors come to your home, or having, what type of deliveries you can have, or can you have signage or things like that. So important to indicate the zoning bylaws and how they apply to your business. Whereas if you're in a commercial space, maybe you're only allowed to provide services out of your commercial space and you're not allowed to retail sell items. So just indicate what that may be. After that, the next question is, how will your business location and operations be affected? And that's referring to zoning regulations. So maybe you're only allowed 3 visitors at your home per day. Maybe that's something that your rural municipality enforces, or maybe you're not allowed to have any visitors, or maybe you're not allowed to sell from your home and people can't come pick up the products that you're producing from your home. You have to deliver them. Or, maybe, as I said, you can only provide services from your office and you can't sell any products. So just briefly indicate how those zoning bylaws can affect your business. And then after that, are there any special licenses that are required for your business? What are they? So a lot of businesses just need to be registered or incorporated, and then they get their municipal business license. But some businesses need some extra permits and licenses. Think, for example, a good one would be a restaurant, especially if a restaurant is selling alcohol. They'll need a liquor license. And then because they have a commercial kitchen where they're producing food for commercial purposes, they need their Saskatchewan Health Authority restaurant permit in order to do that. Certain industries require certain certificates, like think of certain trades, or certain, like hairdressers or barbers or whatever might need certain certifications in their industry in order to operate in that field. Next is, what type of insurance will you need for your business? So do you need professional errors and emissions insurance, professional liability insurance? Do you need property insurance? Do you need commercial general liability insurance, business interruption insurance? Just briefly indicate the types of insurance that you'll get. And then lastly on this page is how much each insurance type cost. So if you're not sure the breakdown of the total policy of the different types in the policy, you can just put the total amount. But if you know what it's going to cost for your CGL plus your E&O insurance, you can just break those down individually in this section here. Scrolling down here to page 9. So we're getting into the financial stuff here. So it says the first component of your financial plan will include project costs and financing plan. This outlines what major costs are required to set up or expand your business and where the money will come from. Related attachments should include quotations for all project costs more than $1,000 and confirmation of sources of funding. So I'll just scroll down a little bit further here. So this is something that was already covered in the initial application form. So you can basically just, for the most part, transfer this information over onto this form. If you've made any updates or things have changed a little bit since your initial application, you can just update those on this form. So I won't cover this in as much detail as the last video because I already went through it. But basically, for the startup of your business or for the project that you're taking on here and expanding, what are your costs going to be? So you can just add these different capital costs by category and add the price for each one, and then add up the total. And now for that startup or that project, how is that money going to be sourced dollar for dollar? So again, with that example from the first video of $50,000, where is that coming from? Partially from cash investment from the owner, maybe the microloan, another loan, other sources here, government funding. So where is that $50,000 coming from? Now scrolling down here to the next section, marketing. So the same thing, are you purchasing some print materials like business cards or flyers or brochures? What is the anticipated cost going to be for this startup or this project? Are you getting someone to build a website for you? Are you paying for some social media advertising? What is the expected cost for the startup or this project? Are you incurring some expenses to get set up at a trade show? Are you purchasing newspaper, radio, or television ads? What's the expected cost? Are you purchasing any signage? So for each one of these, just indicate the expected amount that you'll be spending on the startup of the business or for this project, and then just add up the subtotal below. And now the same thing, how is this being funded? So is that out of pocket from the owner as a cash investment, or are you taking funds from operations, meaning in the case that your business is already operating, are you going to be funding it from the profits from the business? Or is that coming from a business loan or other sources? So same thing here, just add up that subtotal, and that subtotal in this category should match the subtotal in the other column here. And then lastly on this page is business support. So financial management, and this is more so like professional services, like are you hiring an accountant, a lawyer, or a business consultant, or a bookkeeper, or someone like that for this project or for this startup, and what is the anticipated cost? You can just list that here. And then you can just figure out the subtotal. There's that other section here, just please specify below. So maybe there's some other administrative costs involved that you can include. And then on the right here, the same thing. So is that coming from cash investment or funds from operations or some other type of grant or something like that? And so you have the subtotals for those sections. And then here for total project costs, just add up the 3 areas. So you have this subtotal for the top one for capital, this subtotal for marketing, and then this subtotal for business supports. Add up the 3, you get that number. And then to the left here, total project financing. Again, where is that coming from? You just add up the 3 subtotals here from the 3 sections. And what you should see here at the bottom is total project cost should equal total project financing. So again, if that's $50,000 in expected costs, you should be able to explain where that $50,000 is being sourced from. Now scrolling down here to page 10 is just an explanation of terms. So good to familiarize yourself with these terms if you're not already familiar. This might be good to review before you even go through everything else, just in case there's some terms that you don't fully understand or just need a better grasp of. So just kind of an index of terms. And now lastly, we're on page 11 here. So I'll just quickly review this to wrap up this video. So page 11 is just addressing supporting documentation. So it says the following provides a list of supporting documentation that should be submitted with this business planning template to support your business plan and or your request for funding. So with this document that I'm explaining here, the business plan, 11-page PDF, you'll also want to include these other documents when you're sending in this business plan, if they are relevant to you. The examples here, the first one being agreements. If you've entered any agreements. So an example of an agreement would be like if you've signed a lease to rent out some property, or maybe that partnership agreement that you have with a partner, or maybe you've come to an agreement with a supplier to purchase a bunch of things, a bunch of material supplies, whatever that may be. Or maybe you have a contractual agreement to provide a product or service. So good to include that if you have it. Next thing is cash flow projection plan, and I'll actually be covering that in the coming videos here. So basically just an outline of the expected cash flows. That means money coming in and money going out of the business. Drawings or site plans. So if you are operating from home as a website designer, you don't really need any drawings or site plans. Whereas if you are starting your own cafe or restaurant, you're kind of taking over an empty space, you'll want to include just some drawings of the the site plan, basically the layout of the facility. Now the next thing is journeyman or journey person tickets or other certificates of importance. So that could be for you, that could be for managers or anyone else in your business, especially if those are relevant to the business and are required in order for you to provide that service, or if it's going to be really beneficial for you to have that type of certification in the business, if it gives you more credibility or whatever that may be. Next thing is letters of intent. So do you have any letters of intent that have been given to you, for people that intend to hire you for services, or do you have any letters of intent that you've set out for agreements to work with different organizations, or letters of support by individuals, organizations, professionals who are in support of what you're doing and can kind of be like references for you. The next is market data supporting your ability to meet your sales goals. So I covered this a little bit already. Have you done some market research? Do you have some, I talked about up here, contracts lined up? Do you have some letters of intent from organizations that are going to hire you? Things like that just help justify the financial projections that you're coming up with. Because if you're just kind of guessing at it, that's not the best option typically. It's better to have some, reasoning and justification behind how you came up with those numbers. And I know that can be difficult because ultimately it's an opinion, but the more evidence you have to support it, the better it is, and the better it looks in the eyes of those that are providing money, whether that's loans or grants or sources of funding for a business. The next thing is market survey data. So if you have done any research on the market, it could be demographics, and especially on your region, if you are providing construction services, like how many people live in your target market and what are their ages and what percentage of them own their own homes and what type of homes do they have. So if you have anything like that, that could be important. Offers to purchase. So if you are purchasing land or buildings, especially for your business or for this project, would be really important to include that offer to purchase. Or maybe you are taking over a business or taking over some equipment and you've written a formal offer to purchase some of those assets. It would be important to include that as well. And then next is other items of importance to your business. So this would depend a lot on the industry. Maybe, for example, you have the restaurant and you have that liquor license or that Saskatchewan Health Authority restaurant permit or something like that. Next is past financial statements. So again, if your business has already been operating for a while and you already have actual reported financials, you'll want to include those. Price schedule for produce line or service. So how are you pricing your items, whether that's services or products? So you want to have just kind of an outline of how you're pricing them. So maybe for photography services, you kind of have a set rate for engagement photos or wedding photos, or an hourly rate for events or something like that, or a rate per edited photo or group of photos, things like that. Or for a massage therapist, maybe you have your 60-minute massage and 90-minute massage. Maybe you have some like kind of specialty offerings within those, like hot stone or whatever, where it's a little bit of an extra price on top of there. Next would be quotes. So again, you're required to have quotes if you are making purchases over $1,000 in this case. So if you're purchasing, a work truck or some kitchen equipment or things like that, just provide a quote. And then lastly is resumes of key people. So particularly the owner or owners of the business, maybe some key people in the business like managers that you have. So for any of these that are relevant, make sure that you attach them with this business plan. And now once you're done that, this can be a lot of work. So make sure you save it. Don't forget to go back and do the executive summary. You can save it, print it, do both. Just don't hit reset because it'll just wipe away everything that you've gone through. So I'll end this video here, and then you can catch me on the next one soon.